Hello, everyone. Welcome to Job Search Strategies in the New Normal. I'm Amanda Paneris, Director of Alumni Career Services with the UVA Alumni Association, and I'm joined by my colleague and fellow career advisor, Liz Sprouse. We're going to provide some insight on how to navigate the job search process in general, but especially during COVID and quarantine. We'll also have Q&A at the end of the presentation, but feel free to type in your questions at any time into the chat box. We'll be monitoring that. So thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Liz?
Hi, thank you, Amanda, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So the coronavirus has had a significantly negative effect on the workforce and the job market. As of this morning, the World Health Organization was reporting over 29 million cases worldwide, with just under 6.5 million cases in the US. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics is also reporting the unemployment rate at 8.4% for August, with 13.6 million unemployed. The unemployment rate has improved in recent months after reaching a record high of 14.7% in April, just as the class of 2020 was preparing to enter the job market. However, despite recent improvements, 2020 grads have been hit especially hard. Prior to graduation, many of their job or internship offers were rescinded. Job losses also occurred more broadly due to reductions in force and furloughs as companies fought to remain in business or closed altogether. Industries including hospitality, tourism, manufacturing, the arts, and retail have been hit especially hard. Despite promising signs, many companies are still experiencing budget cuts and hiring freezes. Underemployment also remains a factor too, as many who are seeking work have had to accept positions for which they are overqualified. The BLS reports that the unemployment rate and number of unemployed have fallen for 4 consecutive months, yet they still remain higher than they were in February. So overall, there continues to be fewer jobs available and more candidates competing for existing opportunities. In addition to the general employment landscape, COVID-19 has also impacted the job search process itself in multiple ways. As mentioned already, some industries have significantly slowed down. Employment in government, retail trade, professional services, leisure and hospitality, financial activities, manufacturing, and other services remains lower than in February. Finding jobs in your field might definitely be harder right now. And for those who are considering a career pivot, navigating a career transition with little to no relevant experience can also be challenging, especially in a competitive job market. The process of the job search has also been affected by COVID. Networking is always a critical part of the job search process, as most jobs are found by referrals. And right now, networking is challenging because of social distancing. Whereas before we could network in person, meet for coffee, or attend networking events, we now have to network virtually using Zoom, FaceTime, or other similar methods. And that can be challenging for those who are unfamiliar with the technology or those who are more comfortable networking in person. However, networking does remain an extremely important part of the process during periods of higher unemployment. Resumes and cover letters also take on a greater sense of urgency during times like these. In recent years, companies' reliance on applicant tracking systems, or ATSs, has skyrocketed to the point where almost everyone is reading resumes by algorithm. To get through the screening process, your resume has to hit on the right keywords, skills, and relevant experiences and accomplishments. This becomes even more important during periods of high unemployment when the market is highly competitive. All the while, companies do continue to hire for roles that are in high demand, and we continue to hear from employers almost daily asking to share their postings with UVA alumni. So we'll touch later on some resources for finding those jobs. Amanda?
Let's talk about standing out in a competitive job market. So we know that the market is more competitive than ever. Job seekers will really need to hone in on their value proposition and articulate that clearly to employers, which is typical anyway, but especially right now with COVID and quarantine, because we are seeing a recession type of environment, it's flipped very quickly from an environment that we had where alumni were, it was a job seekers market. And we were hearing from employers that they couldn't get talent fast enough. And so now we're in a bit of a flip on that. So thinking about what skills you need to bring to the role, you need to be thinking about whether those skills are relevant or do they need to be updated? Are you being specific about your skills? For example, instead of simply saying you're a strong communicator, you want to show that strength by listing types of communications that you've managed, such as writing articles and reports, delivering presentations, managing contract negotiations, or serving in a front-facing customer role. So you want to show rather than tell by giving specific examples, which helps employers better see you in the role. When we're thinking about highlighting measurable accomplishments, you want to take a look at your current resume. Do you have results in your bullet points, or are you only listing responsibilities? If that's the case, if the latter is the case, try to bring numbers in where you can. I've had a number of clients who are nervous because they might not have a sales-oriented job where they can say they increased sales by 200% or something like that. But you can still use numbers in your resume. You can use them to show scope. How many people did you serve in a year? How many lines of data did you process? And so on. So you can still bring numbers into that resume. It may just look a different way. When you're thinking about skills and accomplishments that need to come together to help tell a compelling story about how you work, you want to make sure the story can be told throughout your process: informational interviews, resumes, cover letters, interview stories, and more. You want to make sure all of these elements come together to provide a cohesive picture of you as a leader and an employee. So you'll be building, it's a building process. You want to think about the skills, your accomplishments, and how you're going to tell that story. And then ultimately, what should drive the above 3 bullet points is a clear understanding of what the company needs and how your qualifications fulfill those needs. The more you can tell your employer how your experience directly fits their role, sometimes telling them multiple times, the more likely you are to land that interview. So here are some ways to reflect on what you want and what's required to get there, or ways to further your research. You want to think about self-reflection, researching companies and opportunities, considering how to fill these experience or skills gaps that you may have, and of course, talking to people in the field or at companies of interest, AKA networking. I know not everyone's thrilled with that word, but that's basically all it is talking to people. So I know this can all feel like a lot to do before you really delve into applying for roles, but doing your research will really help you focus on where you want to go and ultimately save you time in the long run. When you have your plan and a clear vision for what you want, then you're not going to waste time applying to jobs that won't help realize that vision. And so this is a big statement that I have been telling quite a few of my clients because it's true. Employers will understand employment gaps, especially now. I know we're probably all tired of hearing that phrase in these unprecedented times, but in this case, it really does apply. Employers know that we're dealing with an economy and a job search process that's completely unusual. So be honest about your gap, and if you had a chance to do something during the gap, like volunteering or taking classes, or even taking the time to possibly explore a new career or a new direction, mention that. They will appreciate the honesty, and they will completely understand if there is a longer than usual gap during this time. Liz?
Great, thank you. So what are some of the best practices for developing your plan? If you haven't yet defined your path, you need to do that first through a process of research, exploration, and reflection. Then you can refine your targets, determine what you need to do to strengthen your candidacy, and start taking those steps. Finally, then you'll be ready to execute your search and start applying. So during the research and explore stage, you evaluate options and clarify your direction. You may be starting with a pretty good idea of what you want to do, or maybe some general ideas, or possibly even no idea at all. At this stage, you're looking for options that align with your skills and interests. These could include things like your major, skills that you develop through internships and other experiences, and what you enjoy doing or what you're interested in. LinkedIn is a great resource for exploring jobs or career paths where others with your major have gone before, or others with similar interests and skills. So we've included a link to LinkedIn's alumni tool at the end of the presentation, and we'll be sending the slides out to everyone who registered. This process of exploration can also help you get some ideas about specific jobs or titles that you can pursue, as well as the necessary skills and qualifications that you'll need to be competitive. You can then reflect on your current skills and qualifications to see if they align with those of your jobs of interest. Take the time to inventory your existing skills. So this can be a combination of soft skills like attention to detail, your writing ability, or your interpersonal skills, and hard skills. So that would be things like project management, Python, or managing teams. Informational interviews can also help you learn more about the ins and outs of specific jobs, what a typical day is like, what kinds of projects someone in the role works on, and what professional growth might look like. You can talk to people who are in your existing network, or you can reach out to alumni on LinkedIn. It's important right now to be sensitive to what others may be experiencing regarding COVID. So before you reach out, we recommend looking them up to make sure that they're still employed. And even better, if they're second degree contacts through LinkedIn, see if you can reach out to a trusted mutual connection to see if they know if this would be a good time for you to reach out to that person. And if you're reaching out to them directly, it's also a good idea to be sensitive with your messaging, being understanding that these are challenging times. It's helpful also to be extra patient right now and allow a bit more time for a response before following up. People are juggling a lot these days and they might be working odd hours. And then a final thought on exploration and research is to take stock of your criteria and preferences and assess how firm or flexible each one is. This may be things like the salary range that you're looking for, where you want to be geographically, a specific type of workplace culture that you're seeking, or a certain level of work-life balance. And so continuing on that last thought, I've added this slide as a visual so you can see how things balance between your attributes, your criteria, and your options. So that sweet spot in the middle is where everything comes together. And if any of the circles change size, that can affect the balance of all three or the other two circles. So for instance, if you have a significant number of attributes and you're pretty flexible in your criteria, you may find that you have more options. And on the other hand, if you have very specific criteria and you don't have a lot of experience yet, your options might be more limited. So it's important to keep that overall balance in mind. And when the job market is competitive, you might find that you need to be a bit more flexible and or possibly allow more time for your search. Amanda?
Great. So as we mentioned before, research is going to save you a lot of time in the long run, especially when it's time to start applying to your roles of interest. And it's also going to set you apart in a tight job market. So when you're identifying opportunities, how many times have we seen, and I'm guilty of this too, seen a job posting that looks fantastic and our first instinct is to jump right on it. Just update our resume very quickly, update our cover letter very quickly, and just shoot that application off because we want to jump on that opportunity. So I'm going to actually recommend that we don't do that and pursue the pause, which means assess your experience against the specific job requirements of the posting. You want to make sure that your skills match up to what they describe. If they do, double check your resume to make sure you have those relevant skills listed. If you have a skills gap, but you're taking classes to fill that gap, make sure those classes are listed on your resume. As we mentioned before, applicant tracking systems are getting more sophisticated. So you have to go beyond one or two words to make sure that you get through. The AI in these applicant tracking systems is going above and beyond. So they're not only looking for keywords, they're looking for you to mention that keyword again, and they might be looking for particular phrases, not just keywords. And so you just really want to make sure you're practicing that specificity. And also, I mentioned maybe mentioning how you fit with the employer more than once. That's probably a place to do that. You also want to take a few minutes to do some company research to figure out not only the mission and the culture, which is super important, but you also might find some contacts at the company to have a conversation, which will help you, A, learn more about the mission and culture, but B, you may learn more information about the role that you're pursuing or the company in general that isn't listed in the job posting that you can then use to update your resume and include in your cover letter. It's also a great opportunity to add to your cover letter that you had a conversation with someone at the company and here's what you learned about the company and the role. And that can, again, help you stand out a little more. So next you want to take the time to make sure the role is going to pay you what you need to make. This is really important. We want to make sure that the end result of this process is a job that you love that pays you what you need to be paid. So you want to check out salary info on Glassdoor, LinkedIn, or PayScale is another helpful website. This information can help you determine if it's worth applying before you even get started, or give you a point of reference if the application has a field for you to enter your desired salary range. So the last point is the most important, and I know I harp on networking a lot, but it's true. Developing relationships with people in your target companies helps you learn about the company's needs, as I just mentioned, what it's like to work there. Typically, you learn about roles before they're even posted. It does take time, but I absolutely believe it's worth it. I have heard from several clients that it's been challenging to get networking calls with contacts right now. As Liz mentioned, this may be due to turnover or people being extremely busy, especially recruiters, or limited capacity in terms of their balancing home life and online school and work and everything else. So as Liz mentioned, practice patience, try to aim for those second-degree contacts where you have a mutual person who can actually introduce you. And let everyone know that you're looking, as appropriate, of course. Family, friends, previous colleagues. If you have a trusted current colleague and that's an environment that you can do that in, let them know as well. Okay, and just a few resume reminders here. I know it probably feels obvious, but we feel obligated to put these tips in here. So in addition to what we've covered previously, tailoring the resume every time is hugely important. And it's not just a matter of, you know, maybe switching some bullets around or what have you. You want to make sure your professional summary is custom. You want to make sure you've had the keywords and the skills in there that match up with the job description, etc. So make sure you have your measurable achievements highlighted, demonstrating your impact. This is more important than listing responsibilities. So make sure that your bullets are focused on results or, as we mentioned before, scope or management responsibilities or what have you. You want to keep the format clean and try to avoid complicated layouts or graphics unless you're applying to a role in a creative field, then obviously you want to go for something that's a little more interesting. Make sure your cover letter tells a compelling story. Think of it as the intro to your resume. So you want to pique the reader's interest enough to get them to move on to your resume. So I know cover letters are a pain point for a number of my clients as well. It's okay to have a light template that helps save some time, but much like the resume, you want to make sure you're customizing that. And again, if you're having those conversations with people in the company, that's a fantastic way to customize it and catch the attention of the person who's reading it. Liz?
Great. And so then the idea of your resume is to try to get them interested in bringing you in for an interview to talk about the job in more detail. So interviews really are that chance for you to show that you're the right person for the job. Employers are going to be assessing whether you can do the job and if you would fit in well with the team. And it's also a chance for you to evaluate whether the job and the company are a good fit for you. Usually the first interview takes place through a phone screen, and it's often, but not always, with somebody from HR, and is generally intended to determine if you have the main qualifications for the job. And if so, you might then be invited to a second round, which will probably be by video and eventually, hopefully, in person once we're past COVID. Second interviews tend to be with the hiring manager and may include other members of the team or other stakeholders. And the discussions are often more nuanced or technical. The subsequent interviews are not just determining if you meet the bare minimum requirements of the job, but also how you would do the job and whether, of course, you would fit in with the team, as we mentioned. Some of this may vary a little bit according to your field, but generally that's the process you might expect. If you're engaged in an active job search, it's a good idea to already have a few examples ready of success stories, projects that you're especially proud of, and even an example of a time that you failed. These can be discussed during interviews, and the success stories can also be incorporated into your resume as bullet points. So when Amanda was talking about impact statements, these would be some things that you could include. So when you're asked during an interview one of those "tell me about a time when" kinds of questions, you'll already have some examples to share if you've prepared ahead of time. And then you can discuss these examples using the STAR framework. So if you're not already familiar with STAR, it stands for situation, task, action, and result. So an example might be with S, STAR sets the stage, sales were down in the third quarter. So then T stands for task. So that's what you were tasked with doing. So that might be something like, I was asked to come up with a plan to bring in additional revenue. A, or action, is what you actually did. I created a promotional campaign that included direct mail and social media and focused on reaching out to a niche market segment, putting it all together in 3 days. And then R is your result. So then this brought in $500,000 of additional revenue. So again, situation, task, action, and result. You also want to research the company, as Amanda mentioned before. So what are their products and projects? Who are the executives? What's in the news? So you want to be able to speak knowledgeably about these things and to be able to ask thoughtful questions about their work and about the company. Know who their competitors are, as well as their challenges and successes. Use your network to reach out to people at the firm to learn more about the culture. For a phone interview, you want to make sure that you're ready for the call and in a quiet place where you get good cell service. Video interviews require some practice. There's different formats out there, so you want to make sure that you're familiar with the technology. And set up your area and your background so you have what you need and there's nothing distracting or inappropriate in the background. Most importantly, you want to practice so you're familiar and comfortable with the technology. And during the interview, make sure your eye contact is with the camera and not the face on the screen. Some companies are also now using videotaped interviews where the candidates will record themselves responding to a question via video. The candidate might have only one chance to answer with no time to do do-overs. So if you're facing this type of interview, be sure to prepare so you're ready when it's time to record. And as the interview winds down, you want to have a few questions ready to ask the interviewer, questions that show that you're engaged in the work and committed to success. So a couple of possibilities might be, how will success in this role be measured? What would I be expected to accomplish in the first 30, 60, or 90 days? In the past, what are some things that have distinguished the employees who truly excelled in this role? So these, plus some questions that focus more on the technical aspects of the work, can show a high level of interest and engagement. And then finally, you want to follow up with a thank you note to each interviewer. Email is fine, but I would send them within 24 hours of the interview. And it's fine to be brief, but you want to try to tailor each note just a little bit based on the conversation that you had with each of the interviewers. Amanda?
Somehow I managed to unmute and then remute myself. So the good news about all of this, which I know can feel like a lot, is that you don't have to do it alone. Alumni Career Services is here to help. We're going to go through a couple of resources that we've developed to help you through this whole process. So the first is our Alumni Professional Network. So I just saw a question come in through the chat box, and we can go into a little more detail during Q&A, but this is our newest initiative, which is a set of networks which we are continuing to add to that allow alumni to connect with each other in consulting, entrepreneurship, finance, media, entertainment, real estate, sustainability, and tech. So the great thing about these networks is when you join as an alum, you are agreeing to be contacted. So basically, if you join the LinkedIn group, you're saying that you are okay with other members of the group getting in touch to have a conversation. That's the whole point of the network. So we also have occasional virtual events right now, hopefully in person one day when this is all done. So keep an eye out for those. We tend to recruit alumni panels to talk about their experience in a given field. And then we have networking afterward via Zoom, and our alumni have really enjoyed participating in that. We have Career Shift, which is a free tool that we provide to all alumni. You can access it via your UV Alumni Jobs account. And basically, one of my former colleagues called it LinkedIn on steroids. So it is basically a superpowered search engine for jobs, contacts, company information. You can search by a number of different filters in terms of the types of work you may want. What I also appreciate is that it's an aggregator of publicly available information. So what that means is, say you find someone great on LinkedIn, but you don't want to use InMail because we all know InMail doesn't always get to the person or they don't see it. If you look that person up in Career Shift and their work email address is public, it will find it. And so then you might have a more direct way to still respectfully contact that person, but without having to worry about whether they've seen your message on LinkedIn. So that's just one example of the usefulness of Career Shift. We also have UV Alumni Jobs, which is our job posting board for alumni. Our employer relations Associate Director, Angela Antonucci, has done a fantastic job of generating more alumni posted jobs. So we have been increasing those postings for the last 2 years. And our general topical website. So if you go to alumni.virginia.edu/careers, we have a number of resources in the resources section, including job boards by industry, webinars, resources for specific job search needs, special populations. It's a really handy collection of things that we've curated for you so that you don't have to do the searching that we did for those resources. So I would check all of those out. Our number one thing that we get asked about is our individual advising appointments. So we do offer one-on-one advising via Zoom or phone. We can talk about job search, resumes, LinkedIn profiles, interview strategy, negotiation. Right now is a hot time for grad school planning and essay reviews. We do a lot of those in the fall. Career assessments, we offer the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and the Strong Interest Inventory assessments. And you can request a meeting for any of those things via uvalumnijobs.com.
Great, and since the pandemic began, we've also been collecting some COVID-related resources from some of the sources that we trust. So this slide addresses several U.S. Department of Labor resources and one Virginia resource. And then we have another page that lists some other sites that are currently offering COVID-related as well as a general job search and relevant career management or resume and cover letter strategy and content. So as we mentioned earlier, we're going to be sending a copy of the slides along with a recording of the presentation to everyone who registered. So you'll be able to access all of these links through the PDF of the slides. And
okay, well, currently we only have one question in the chat box, but feel free to, if you have questions, go ahead and type those in. We'll go ahead and start with the first one, which is, what is the best way to use UVA Alumni Career Services to connect with people working in your field of interest? So as I mentioned previously, our alumni professional networks are probably the #1 way to start to dive into that. We've had a number of alumni come into our LinkedIn group to introduce themselves, mention what they're seeking, or mention what the type of role they'd like to learn about, and generate some connections there. We also, in our one-on-one advising, can work with you on a specific type of networking strategy. If we can share some networking tools. There are also networking tools in the resources section of the website. So taking you through the LinkedIn Alumni Insights tool, as I mentioned before, Career Shift's a fantastic resource for finding connections. And so we know that everyone's situation is highly individual. So it would probably depend on what your search was. I mean, of course, if we know recruiters in certain companies and you're interested in a certain company, we might be able to make that introduction. That's not guaranteed. It depends on the personality of the recruiter. But we're always happy to speak with you and learn more about your search and start to customize the right kind of strategy for you. Liz, did you have any other thoughts on networking support?
Yeah, I think you covered it really well. I mean, the LinkedIn alumni tool is another great resource. So if you're looking to find alumni by things like location or company affiliation, major or specific skills, or even keywords, that's another great resource. And that's capitalizing on all UVA alumni who are LinkedIn members.
Great. This question is probably a good one for you, Liz. Any suggestions for people who are looking to pivot career fields, especially after doing a service program like teaching, maybe like Teach for America or college?
Yeah, so a lot of times when you're looking to make a pivot, you're going to have some transferable skills. So they may not always be apparent, but we can definitely work with you to help you uncover them. Or if you've kind of figured out what they are, we can work with you to help you highlight them in a way that makes sense. Sometimes it involves kind of stripping the skill down to more of its raw essence and maybe removing a bit of the context from the setting that you used it in. So if you're talking about presenting material to elementary students initially, and maybe you're looking to pivot into a role where you would be providing training or coaching or leadership to adults, you can focus more on the idea of communicating complex material to other individuals, or think about how you might approach that skill from a fresh perspective. And if you take the job description into consideration and you look at the way they're wording the requirement, you can go through a job description kind of item by item and ask yourself, have I done this before? And then you can kind of inventory the skills that you have that are relevant for the job. And we can definitely help with that if you can use our assistance. Amanda, is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I think you covered most of it. I think there's also that piece of assessing, depending on the type of role or field that you're looking to go into, you're assessing it from a couple of different lenses. So as Liz said, what are the transferable skills? What are the requirements? Like, what are the absolute stage gates that you have to clear in order to enter that field? So is there like an educational component? Is there another degree that may be needed, or a certificate program or something like that? It can depend on the field that you're looking to go into. I can say I've had a number of students when I was a career advisor at Darden who were teachers coming out of Teach for America to go, flip into business after going through the MBA program, and teachers always did fabulously during their program. So I think because they're good listeners. So it really just depends on the type of field you're looking to go into. I think the other big thing is to talk to people who are in that field. Ideally, if you can find people who switched from like a service program to the type of field that you're interested in, or who had a very similar, can be helpful too, because that's a very quick way to sort of see what was someone's method, what did they encounter in terms of obstacles or what have you. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. I switched fields, I switched careers back in 2012. So I'm living proof it can be done. And we have a lot of experience helping people switch careers. So we'd be happy to chat with you. Okay. Well, I'm gonna maybe wait a beat to see if any other questions come in. But for now, it looks like, how do I look into the one-on-one advising? So you can book through UV Alumni Jobs. If you have an account there, that's where you book the advising. While Liz goes through some of the wrap up, I'm going to put the link into the chat for where you can learn more about our career advising and what's involved, and where to book your appointment. So I'm actually looking that up right now, multitasking. I'm going to pop this link in here. And that's where, if you want to learn a little bit more about our advising, you can get the lay of the land, and then you would book your appointment through your account in UV Alumni Jobs.
Great, thank you. So if any of you would like to connect with us after the webinar, you can reach out to us through LinkedIn, or you can email us directly. We've included all of our contact information. We also included contacts for our colleagues, Angela Antonucci, who manages UVA Alumni Jobs and our employer relations efforts, and Eric Hunter, who oversees the alumni professional networks. If you have a question but you're not sure which one of us it should be directed to, feel free to send an email to alumnicareers@virginia.edu. We all receive emails at that address, and then whichever one of us would be appropriate to respond will do so. We've also included a link to our website. I think we had this earlier in the presentation as well, but it doesn't hurt to include it an extra time. So.
All right, guys. Well, we made it to the end. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, as Liz said, please feel free to get in touch if we can help with your job search, or if you're considering grad school or what have you. Stay healthy and have a great day. Thanks again.